This edition of our podcast is brought to you by 360 Health and Well Balanced Nutrition.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Hello there. This is Eleanor Russell with the Health Geeks, and Kristen Norton is with me today. We're going to be talking about books, and today's book is Spark. It's the revolutionary new science of exercise and the brain. It's by John Ratey, who is an MD psychiatrist who sometimes says he's not a real doctor. Real doctors are cardiologists, but that's debatable. I think he earned his MD like all the others did. He lives in Massachusetts. He's a professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. And science writer Eric Hagerman wrote this with him, who lives in New Jersey. He writes for Wired, Outside, and Popular Science. So these guys bring to the table a little bit of expertise. And the whole premise that I got out of this book was, why should you care about how your brain works? Have you ever thought about your brain? We know we've got them. We go to school, right? We try to train them. We try to do things. But do we care how it works? And maybe if we spend a little time learning about that, we would be able to train our brains a little better.
Right. And it's funny because you think it's about exercise, but it's not just about exercise. It's about exercise in the brain.
Right. And I think because of that, it makes it a different kind of a read. A lot of us have read books about exercise, studied exercise. We go to the gym or we walk. And with COVID, I believe a lot of us have revisited activity. And according to this author, this is a good thing that's happening to our societies. What the book is about is how and why physical activity is crucial to the way we think and feel, how exercise cues the building blocks of learning in the brain, how exercise affects mood, anxiety, and attention, how it guards against stress, and how it reverses some of the effects of aging in the brain, and how women who exercise can help stave off those tumultuous effects of hormonal changes. So is that interesting to anybody out there?
Yeah, you think, why would I want to read Spark? And to me, based off of what you just said, Eleanor, is there are people who think, oh, I should exercise, but I don't. It's such a chore. It's boring, whatever. And I know that people can be motivated when they realize why it's important. There's someone called a questioner. This is a theory based off of The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin, that some people are questioners, and that means they are not motivated to do something until they know why that's important. And so questioners out there, if that's you, you're going to like Spark because it really does tell you why we need to be exercising. It takes the should out of it and puts the, oh my gosh, why not? Into exercise.
Yeah, so more like we want to do this rather than we should do this.
Exactly.
Yeah, and if we could create that, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yes, this is what the world needs.
Yeah. I think you hit on the button there. This is the kind of book I love to read because I'm an analytical type of person, and I do question. I want to know why, and I want to know exactly why and what is the mechanism and what's the physiology of that. So if you're that kind of a person, this will answer your questions. It'll take you down to the noogies and give you the info. If you're a little less likely or interested or don't have a background in science, this book may be a little more challenging for you. And it may be one that you kind of start and say, this is laborious. So don't know who you are. Let us know. Has anybody out there read this book? I will tell you, we picked out some quotes in the other books we've talked about. And in this book, the dedication quote is from Plato, who was around a long time ago. So this is not like a new idea. But he said, in order for man to succeed in life, God provided him with two means, education and physical activity, not separately, one for the soul and the other for the body, but the two together. These two means man can attain perfection. So what Ratey is exploring is the relationship between the body and the mind. Is the body taking care of the mind the brain? Is the brain the mind? We don't know. Or is the brain controlling the body? And a lot of times when we study science, we learn that the nervous system controls the body. Right. And so that's the way a lot of people think about it. And he's suggesting, that might not be the whole story. Maybe by moving your body, your mind is going to work better. Your brain will function better. And I think he makes a pretty compelling story. And he starts this off with a case study. You know, we talked about stories help us learn things.
Yes.
And I have had children. I've been a kid. So I grew up in a school. And I remember when I was growing up, President Kennedy was having the physical fitness campaign in the United States. And we in elementary school had to go out and do the broad jumps. And they had to measure it. And they had to report it back to the government to say that we were being active.
Right.
And it was a good thing for us. I mean,
absolutely.
And we had recess and we had playtime during school. We could go out and run. Now, my children have been bussed around to different schools far away from the neighborhoods, and they haven't had the same attention to physical education as I think my generation had. And now I think we're returning to this. And the case study that Ratey starts his book off with is about a community in Chicago. And it's Naperville High School. And he talks about the students. He puts them on a wake up in the morning type of thing, get to school early, and let's put a heart monitor on you and have you run the track. And you have to hit the red button, and then you hit the red button, or the blue button, the blue button, the blue button, and then the red button. And you're trying to beat yourself. You're not trying to beat somebody else. You're trying to improve your own performance. And they had 19,000 students in that district, and it was the fittest in the nation. And they are also some of the smartest. So there's a correlation, perhaps, between the level of activity these kids were doing and their academic performance. And some of the concerns that we've had is that when you look at the trends in international math and science study, some Asian countries, nearly half of the students score in the top tier, but only 7% of U.S. students hit that mark. 97% of the Naperville 8th grade students took that test, and they were number one in the world in science and sixth behind Singapore, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Japan in math. So that's pretty impressive results.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that is, I think, something that we should direct our attention to. If it's something so simple as helping our kids move their bodies and their brains will work better, it can only have a good outcome for the rest of us as a society. So I love the idea that Ratey started with that. Did you have a reaction to that of school systems and exercise in school?
Yeah, I think they're starting to come around to it because my kids both have activity built into their day at school. But, you know, we as a society tend to separate exercise and schoolwork. And, you know, we tell the kids, sit still and pay attention, be quiet. Yet he points out in this book that we're actually doing a disservice to have them sit in that desk all day long and be quiet because they can't learn as well without that activity. So I love that my kids come home and they tell me, yeah, we did yoga today. We had a yoga break.
Yeah.
And we had a dance break.
Yeah.
And we got outside. So I'm like, well, your teachers know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, Ratey says we need a new stereotype, and we should call it the smart jock. Because we used to talk about the dumb jock. Yeah, it should be the smart jock. Because kids are spending 5.5 hours a day in front of the screen. And I know with COVID, there's a whole bunch of kids that are spending more than 5.5 hours a day. Yeah. And their school is now delivered on a screen. And that's if they even pay attention to it. So we are really driving people to this sedentary look at a screen lifestyle. 30% of school-aged children are overweight, and we know that can't be good for us as we age. 5 years of the CDC stats reflect that students with higher fitness scores also have higher test scores. So we're getting a trend that shows the more activity you have, the better it's going to be. So if we could have some influence in our communities about encouraging physical education and a structured physical education program that's kind of described in this book, I think that would be a really nice outcome. So those of you listening out there, I want you to be paying attention to this because you could have some influence in your PTAs and those sorts of things.
Yeah, Yeah, well, and it could be in workplaces as well. He just starts off with school, but, with...
Yeah, GE and Coca-Cola.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And there was one other company he talked about, and they were able to reduce their insurance premiums because these people weren't making all these health claims. And people liked their work better, and they weren't fatigued at the end of the day, so they went home to a little happier at-home time. I mean, this is all good stuff.
It is. I'm excited to talk about, he goes into different diseases and complications and just things in general, very specific that exercise can benefit. I'm excited to talk about those.
Oh, good, because before we do that, to understand this book, you're going to have to take a course in neuroanatomy and neurophysiology.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. So there's terminology in here that you'll have to get familiar with if you choose to read this book.
He does have a glossary in the back.
Yes, he does.
With those words.
Yeah, and it was very important. When you're reading this book, you'll probably run into a whole lot of technical terminology like BDNF, insulin growth factor, serotonin, pituitary, which you may have heard before. Just be prepared for it because this book goes into very much detail and analysis, and I like it.
It's right up your alley.
Right, like he says, I swim in that pool.
Yeah. Now, for me, on the other hand, it's a little much at times, and so if the technical stuff turns you off, you may not want to read this book. You might just want to listen to us talk about it and get some gems.
Yeah, and I've always liked exercise. I've been really lucky. I had an exercise prescription when I was a child. I had scoliosis, and my mom and dad figured out that an orthopedic guy might submit me to surgery. So they were looking around, and they found one who decided that exercise would help me as I grew. It would straighten my back out. So instead of having to have a terrible traumatic surgery and live with the outcomes of that with rods up my back, I got to avoid that because of a rigorous exercise routine. And I feel wonderful about having had parents with foresight to do something a little different and go down the prevention route. And so exercise is near and dear to me. So that's another reason I like this book. And in this book, he talks about all of the ways the body responds to exercise and how it can improve your health from many dimensions. And so he talks about disorders, mental disorders that a lot of people are struggling with, like anxiety. And a lot of people are confronted with, should I take Prozac? Are there any other options? When Xanax had a recall last year, 2019 anyway, for contamination. So you take a drug, you might be taking other things besides the drug and not know it. These are complicated things, but when you listen to the commercials on television, do you ever hear those last 30 seconds of, oh, tell your doctor if you have this condition before you take this drug, or it can cause nausea, drowsiness, dizziness, anxiety, trouble sleeping, loss of appetite, tiredness, sweating, yawning, and maybe sexual problems.
And it goes on
and it's
on.
just on. It's longer than the ad, and you're thinking, I don't know if I want to take that or not.
Right.
So, are there other options for these things? And so what these authors are suggesting is talk to your providers, say, would exercise, if they're not suggesting it to you and not writing an exercise prescription like I was so lucky to get many, many years ago, but I don't think they're being written very often.
Right.
Has anybody out there ever gotten an exercise prescription from their primary care doc?
I never.
Or their internist or their cardiologist?
Yeah.
Maybe after you've had a heart attack, they're going to say, oh, you need to go to cardiac rehab. And we know that that's good for us. If you happen to have a heart attack and that is an option for you, it could be a really good option. We know that exercise helps us recover. We're getting out of the hospital sooner if we get it. It used to leave you in a hospital for 3 weeks. Now they're saying, go home. And you go, what? It's good for you to go home and move the body. So one of the take-home messages for me in this book is move your body. Don't forget, move your body. Do it regularly.
Yeah, and that we underestimate exercise. We often don't think about the connection. Mm-hmm. It's often like, it's in the diet industry. It's you do this to lose weight. You do this to be healthy. You do this to look a certain way. And it's never really like, my doctor told me I should exercise for my anxiety, when it really should be. I love that this book brings to light and is very technical and proves that we should be doing that more often. We should be asking our doctor, can exercise help this?
Right. There's a thing called clinical blindness that he talks about in here. And he gave an example that I think I will share with you. The 2004 New England Journal of Medicine did a review article. Now, review articles are really nice because they go out and they sample all the medical literature on a topic and then synthesize it for the providers and makes it a really nice overview of whatever they were looking up. So this review article was looking at treatments for generalized anxiety disorder. And there were 13 pharmaceutical drugs, and they gave a little nod to therapy, like psychotherapy, and a little nod to relaxation, but totally omitted exercise. It was not mentioned in the review. 2004.
Wow.
Cardiologists responded, taking on the psychiatrists, taking them to task, because this is something that happens. They publish these papers, and then people write to the New England Journal and say, I have a reaction to that article. So these cardiologists wrote in, and psychiatrists had written the papers and said that they need to treat the whole patient, which I thought was really interesting. Cardiologists, we often think just treat your heart, but
Right.
they're taking a more holistic approach to care of our bodies and ourselves. So the heart works on the brain, and it's modulating the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary axis, and it can be very helpful in treating these disorders like anxiety. And it's a shame that even in the 2000s, the new century, we're still slow to say, move your body with a white coat on. Move, because if you have a white coat on, you say, move your body, people might say, okay, I'll go move it.
They're going to listen
Yeah,
to you.
yeah. Another group of people is pregnant women. Should they exercise or not? A lot of people say, oh, it's too, I got this big belly, I'm not going to move.
And a lot of people used to be afraid. I'm going to hurt the baby if I exercise.
Mm-hmm. I remember I took jazzercise when I was pregnant with my first child, and I had a lot of fun in my little black leotard, my belly hanging out. But we had a Rockette taught me the class. It was a bunch of fun to see me in there trying to move. But I stayed active, and I had a very good time with it. So that's one anecdote from a personal stand.
Hold on, I'm just picturing Eleanor as a Rockette when she's pregnant.
Yeah. It's a picture. What happens with that, though, is they say that pregnant women have 3 times the ANP, which is atrial natriuretic peptide, and it comes out of the heart, and it protects the baby's brain from the stress that the mom is under. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, so it's actually not hurting.
Yeah, because when you're pregnant, are you stressed? I mean, is your life changing? Is your whole world upside down? I know a mother right now who's got 3 other children, is pregnant with her 4th, and she's full-time working, and her husband is working too, and so they can't send the kids to school, and they were sending kids to school, so can you imagine the stress that mom's under?
Oh my gosh,
no. But her heart is kind of protecting her if she's exercising.
If she's
exercising, her heart
it blocks the stress
there
from the baby's brain.
Right. Let's see. What about depression? Do you know anybody that suffers from depression? I think that's pretty rampant here in the United States.
Yes, I think we all know somebody.
Mm-hmm. And we know that pain is related to depression. Most people that are depressed
chronic pain.
They hurt. Yeah, they don't feel good. Turns out that these guys decided from their reading and reported to us that actually depression is a form of hibernation. That we go and we get still and we avoid harm. So I thought that was
we're
a really
trying to protect ourselves.
Yeah, a really different way to think about what's going on with depression. Why is that a reaction we would get? But it may be wired into us. And when we have that chronic depression, we even get structural changes in our brain. The gray matter and white matter up there atrophy. Move your body. It can help. We'll secrete chemicals from our muscles and our brain that will help reverse that pathway that's saying fear, avoid it, don't get hurt. So another disorder is attention deficit. Anybody have experience with attention deficit?
Yep, that's me.
And hyperactivity that sometimes goes along with that. And those folks like chaos and high drama and deadline pressures. And that's because when they get into that that stress, they are kind of addicted to the drugs that come out of that. It makes them feel good, so they need more. If you exercise, guess what? You can get more of those chemicals. So we've seen in these school things, they even have new furniture for kids that have hyperactivity that lets the chair move so that they can stay in motion while they're learning, and it helps the kids focus because their muscles are moving, and it talks to the brain. Instead of the brain controlling the muscles are helping control the brain. I love it. I think this book is fabulous. All right, so the bottom line is exercise. That's all I can say. Exercise is going to increase your levels of dopamine and norepinephrine. You're going to get cellular effects. It's going to help your brain. And what Ratey hopes for in writing this book, like I said, is that we can lower our dependency on some of these chemical pharmaceuticals like Adderall, Paxil, Klonopin, Ritalin, Wellbutrin, Zoloft. And we all heard of those drugs? We've all heard of those drugs. They're out there. People are taking them. And they're good drugs. It's not to say that they don't have an effect. But exercising, and particularly in the morning when you get started, get your body moving, you might be able to take the drugs later in the day and maybe not as much of them. Wouldn't that be, a gift for some folks?
Yeah, absolutely. People often come to me because they want to change their lifestyles so that they don't have to take as much medication. Mm-hmm. And this is the perfect example. And that's those side effects. Move your body.
Yeah. It's those side effects that just make it kills them in a way. I mean, their personality or how their self-esteem, like we've talked about, those sorts of things. If you exercise regularly, you might need some support for that workout because a workout has structure. And 360 Health can help you design the nutritional support to make your exercise give you the optimum outcome. Give me a call or check my website, 360health, 4u.com.
Speaking of exercise, a lot of people are doing it to improve their health. And along with that goes good nutrition. If you feel confused or overwhelmed about the misinformation or variety of information that's out there on the internet and need help, need a friendly coach to help you sort through that and figure out what's going to work for you, give us a call at Well Balanced Nutrition or visit us at wellbalancednutrition.com, and we can help you find a unique plan that will be just for you.
I don't know that I have too much else to say about this except, do you know anybody that's addicted to anything like alcohol or drugs?
Yeah, so this says it can help with addiction too, which is fascinating.
Yeah, and in a way he's saying get hooked on exercise.
Yeah.
and create alternate pathways. And that's he has some really interesting case studies in here of very serious chronic alcoholics who have recovered. And I'm sure it's not a one therapy. I'm sure there's multiple therapies, and you have to have a community. And we do know that if you are isolated, you are tending to suffer more of these mental disorders. So when you're exercising, if you can do it with someone, you will get a better benefit. And that has to do with the interactions that we have as humans. So having that community of support, and we've talked about in our healthy lifestyles that Kristen and I both are advocating for, that when you do it in community and you have a positive community, things are better. And if you have a community that likes to exercise with you, you're more likely eat better, you're more likely going to have positive thoughts, and everything's going to get better. So this is just a piece of the puzzle for a healthy lifestyle. And so if you are one of the people or you know somebody in your circle who is struggling with mental disorders, this book might really be a good one for you to check into because it's going to show you there are some options to learn about and to talk to your medical providers about. At the end of the book, they give a regimen if you want to adopt some of these ideas, which I think is kind of instructive. Do you want to run, jog, or walk? Pick one of those.
Okay.
Because that's an aerobic exercise, and do it for an extended period of time, like 30 minutes or longer, maybe 45 to 60 minutes, 6 times a week.
Wow.
And really a daily walk is really good. Mm-hmm. Getting in a daily walk. And do you do that?
Not every day. I break my activity up. I will do 10 minutes at a time.
And we know that there are benefits from that. We've learned that. Isn't that a gift?
Yes.
That was like, oh, wow, this can happen.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have to find that hour and a half at the gym that I can't find in my workday.
Right.
Or
I'm kind of like that ADD child who, like, I can't sit there for very long. So when I get distracted, then I'll go, okay, now it's time to move my body. And
did you set an alarm? Did you have to set an alarm for a while to get you into that habit?
Nope. It's just when I can be hyper focused on something, so it does help to have an alarm, but just kind of when I hit that slump.
Because that's that idea of awareness of where we are in our thing, to let the flag go off and say, oh, I need to do this, and if I do this, it'll be better. And I think sometimes when
an alarm is nice.
Yeah, when you're learning or starting, these timer things can be very helpful.
Yeah, and now they have those smart watches that'll say, hey,
Move.
get up and move.
Yeah.
You've been sitting for too long. Whether we choose to pay attention to them is one thing.
Well, when you're moving, one of the ideas is how intense should your movement be?
Oh,
and they do talk about that too, moderate to high intensity. And the suggestions is 4 of those 6 days that you're doing this should be on the moderate intensity side. But 2 of the days you need to get into a high intensity, at least twice during your workout week. And even more important is, particularly until you can sense your body signals, is to wear a heart monitor. They suggest doing that, figuring out what your target rates are. They give you the formula for it, and I'm going to share that with you right now just because you might hear it. You take 220, that's a number, and you subtract your age from it, and that's going to give you your maximum heart rate. And when you wear a heart monitor, then you want to get to your target zone, which is 75 to 90% of that maximum rate, and hold it there. So you can check yourself. And that's why some of these digital things that people are wearing now are really helpful. You don't have to do a lot of the calculations, but you do have to program it. So at the beginning of it, you're going to want to get that information into your monitor. And the other thing is to stick to it. Don't do it for 2 weeks and then quit. So here we are at the beginning of the year. It's January. Everybody's got all these New Year's resolutions, and they're saying, oh, I'm going to be active. And 2 weeks into it, they're dead. They're done. They're sitting down again. So that idea of, no, I'm making a commitment to this. So 360 Health has a really good program right now where we are encouraging people to do 2,021 miles in 2021. That sounds like a big deal, but guess what? You can get some teammates and do it with you. And so
having a team makes everything better.
Yeah, and you can share the miles, and you can do it as a family, or you can do it with the best buddy or whatever. But it can be done, and you can encourage each other, because that's moving into that community. Get somebody with you, and you'll stick to this resolution, and you'll get the health benefits from it. You got to be flexible, because some days it rains, and you might not want to go out, and it's too cold. So figure out what you're going to do on those days. Get that planned ahead of time. And then, Kristen and I really like our planners. We like, I use a Passion Planner. And what was it that you were using?
It's by Inkwell Press.
Right. And it had some other features in there. But if you'll write your exercise in your calendar and protect it, do not overschedule anything on top of it, it could happen. So that's what I think about this book. I think it's a great book. If you want to skip to the end, read the regimen. There's a glossary. It'll help you with the terms. So it's I like this book a lot, you can tell. So I'll let Kristen review it from her side.
Yeah, I liked it. I think it was a great, if you do want to know the technical things that are going on and why it helps with those certain conditions like depression and ADHD. But even if you don't read it, we are just excited to share that, if you're finding it hard to get motivated to work out or to exercise, to move your body, think of it as a different way. Think of it as, this is important for my brain. And it's like you said in the beginning, Eleanor, it's either I'm growing or I'm deteriorating, right? And if we are inactive, that just means we're deteriorating. And think about it that way. It could give you some new motivation and inspiration to move your body every day.
Great.
That's what I liked about it.
Well, I think we got to figure out what we're going to read next.
That's right. Well, stay tuned, and thanks for listening in. Don't forget to share your opinions with us in the comment section. Find us on Facebook or email us. You can email Kristen at Kristen at wellbalancenutrition.com.
Or Eleanor at EL Russell, RUSSELL, at 360health4u.com.
And tell us what you think. Till then, we'll talk to you next time.
The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the express written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.